Last week, we talked to Thomas Jones from the Austin American-Statesman about the Austin area. Now we're going from the 512 over to the 325 as we bring in Miss Ravin Ray. She's a sports anchor and reporter from KTAB and KRBC out there in the great town of Abilene. Ravin, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing well. Thank you so much for hopping on with us today. We're very excited. You're actually our first female guest on Women Talking Football in one of our regional breakdowns. So we're incredibly excited to have you. But we want to start off with a big thing that we like to do on this show is to get to know people, especially get to know other women who are talking football in the state of Texas. So you don't have to give me your entire life story, but tell our people who might not be familiar with your work a little bit of your background and how you ended up there in Abilene.
So I'm actually from Oklahoma. I went to college at the University of Central Oklahoma, which is in Edmond. I graduated last May, got this job in July, so I've been here. My year is actually coming up in a couple of weeks. So I've been down here in the big country for a year. And that's kind of how I got into it. I was a big sports person in high school and college and decided, maybe I should be on the other side of things because, like us, sports is not forever for us. So it's like, maybe I should be on the other side of things and interview people. So that's kind of where my dream has lied, is me being here in the big country and covering football and all kinds of things.
Ravin, the question that popped immediately into my head when you said that you grew up in Oklahoma, of course, I'm sure you grew up around Oklahoma high school football, and moving to Texas, basically covering Texas high school football for a job for about a year now, you said. How different is Oklahoma high school football than Texas high school football?
Oh my gosh.
I knew we were going to get that response.
That was the first thing I want to say. But the second thing, I grew up in a Class 2A school is where I was. So it's completely different coming down here in general and seeing the 2As of how they do things compared to the 2As in Oklahoma, let alone the 6As. It's just insane how, even having a big blow-up thing to get to run through, what?
Did you have a bump? Did you have a mum?
Yeah. We didn't even, we had the moms, and they just run out from the locker room. That's the biggest thing you could possibly see at a football game in Oklahoma. That was it.
That's wild.
Well, and that is funny because I know for a fact that Albany has one of the largest blow-ups I have ever seen to run through. That A has to be 40 foot tall. It's insane. And that's obviously, this is perfect because it leads me into the next question is where you're at in the big country, man. You're seeing teams being able to play all the way down into December. We're seeing you at the state championship games at AT&T basically every year. And it might not be the name brand 6A programs that people are used to hearing about, but you look at teams like Jim Ned and Hawley and Westbrook and May and Strawn, and those are all teams that have been at AT&T Stadium very recently. What is it like for you knowing that you're going to be covering Texas high school football for legitimately almost all 17 weeks of the season every single year that you're down there?
Yes, we've actually been covering them since the start of July, believe it or not, already, because and 7-on-7 as well. But we do a thing with players to watch and games to be looking out for the season. We've already done that. I mean, we are already knee deep in it, especially starting Monday, August 1st is when everything's happening. But yes, we cover 59 high schools down here in the big country. And I mean, it goes from, and now, Abilene High is in 5A now. It's completely different. We've got Wiley and Cooper in the same district. And that's a Southtown Showdown that we call it. It's the season finale for both of those teams. So that is probably going to be a game that's going to get either one of them to the playoffs. Things like that. But yes, that is just 5A. I mean, there's 4A with Brownwood. I mean, that's something that's really, really going to surprise you guys here is with Brownwood. They're going to come around the corner and sneak up and all of a sudden be in the regionals. They are going to be so good. But yeah, like you said, Jim Ned, Hawley, Westbrook, May, they've all been in the state championship the past 2 years. Hawley is a big one. That was a big team of ours this past season. I mean, last year I think they had 6 or 7 straight shutouts in games. I mean, they shut people out. They would win 45-0, 60-0. They were insane last year. And again, this year they've got everyone back. they were the they were the runner-ups in state last year. And then, we had May and Westbrook playing each other in the Class A state championship last year. And of course, we had a Westbrook win, and May got runner-up. So we've got a lot of things going on for sure in all the aspects of big country. I mean, I could talk about any of them. Albany definitely number one in Division I. I mean, that's big in Class 2A. They are definitely, with Jenny Faith as head coach. I mean, anyone that gets coached by Jenny Faith, you're set up for success for sure.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to something that you said right there. You cover two of the teams that ended up basically playing each other in the state championship. When you look into that Sixman Football classification and you go to Westbrook and May, you get to see two of those teams. What is that like as a journalist for you to go? I mean, you get a little bit of a rooting interest there, but to see both of those teams playing each other on the nation's largest Texas high school football stage, what was that experience like for you?
And exactly. And it's so crazy because they actually are the furthest away from us in Abilene. They're the two furthest Class A's away from us. And whenever they were doing so well in the playoffs, we would Zoom call them because they were that far away. And then we went to state and we saw them just coming out and seeing just the communities of both places come to AT&T Stadium. I mean, it was so cool to get to see communities get to go and experience that, especially when you're from that small of a town. I bet that was just amazing. I know my school never went to state, but if they did, it would have been a big deal.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. Actually, our Texas high school football insider, Matt Stepp, I'm sure that you've heard of him, is in the comments saying that you're stealing his thunder on his hipster pick of Brownwood. So I would love to hear more about that. You know, the Lions is one that we kind of consider a little bit more Central Texas, but a big thing. And obviously the cover of our magazine was just shot there in Gordonwood Stadium. So give us a little bit more on what we should be looking into and what you and Stepp both agree might be a little bit of a hipster pick there for the Lions.
You're so funny, Matt Stepp. You're so funny.
Get him.
Because we put, so we'll tell you this, at the 1st of July, we put iCall, the new quarterback for Brownwood, as a player to watch this year. And I think a week later, y'all came back out with the new realignment for Brownwood saying, actually, I think we want to come back on this and say, Brownwood might be a little better than we thought. So yes, I'm telling you, iCall is one of our guys that was with us at BCH Sports. He actually just got a job in Georgia, so it's just me and my boss, David Robinette, in the sports department right now. So that's a big thing as well. Only two of us are in it, but he left. He was the one that kind of found him. He was like, guys, I'm telling you, he's really good. He was watching him on 7-on-7. I personally have not seen him yet, but on Monday I am going to early Brownwood and Bangs, so I will get to see him and see what he has to offer. But I mean, with Sammy Burnett as their coach as well, just like Denny Faith, I mean, anything is possible with these guys. Last year, they had a very, very tough district. This year, they've got it a little bit easier. I mean, not 100%, but they've got it a lot easier, I feel like. And it's just something, they're going to come around the corner and just tear it up, I feel like.
Good to know.
Ravin, I'm going to ask you something here. I'm really curious. So on our list today, we're going to talk about the Stephenville Yellow Jackets as part of the Big Country region. Do you consider them a part of the Big Country region, or do you think that they're a little bit too far south?
So the only place that covers Stephenville in our thing is Big Country Preps and some Abilene Reporter News, so it's mainly the newspaper guys. But I will say Sterling Doty does a great job with the Stephenville Yellow Jackets. They are always in something. They're always in baseball, football, basketball, soccer, anything you can think of. Stephenville is out there killing it in 4A. So always see them against Snyder, for sure. Snyder's a big one for me as well. But yeah, they always, we don't cover them, but we always see them, so it feels like we should.
I love it.
So we asked you earlier a little bit of the difference between obviously you growing up in Oklahoma and then coming down here and seeing the large scale that Texas high school football can be when you're talking about the Coopers, when you're talking about the Wileys and the big stadiums out there, and you're covering ACU stuff too. But the thing that I want to go back to a little bit is six-man ball. So we've got, I believe, 8 or 9 of the teams in our Big Country, like, pool that are ranked in the top 25 when it comes to six-man football. When you got here and realized that you were going to be really diving into all the greatness that is 1A six-man football, what was that like in your brain of going, well, man, I know football, but this is so different.
Oh my gosh. So one of my very first stories, I covered the Hermley Cardinals, which is they're really good in everything as well, basketball, softball, all the things. But I went to my very first six-man practice with Sammy Winters, the head coach. And I tried to I went a little about 10 yards ahead, of the line. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get the quarterback. And I sat there and I was like, wait, who's the quarterback? Because they set up with like three guys behind the line, and it's like, what? And then there's just three guys in the quote unquote line, and it's like, I don't know what's going on. And then by the end of the day, I was like, okay, this makes so much sense. But it's hard to cover six-man football when you get highlights. It's just, you never know what's going to happen.
I was fixing to say, from shooting highlights, man, you want to talk about having to be on it at all times. That is not easy. We're talking to Ravin Ray, sports anchor and reporter out of KTAB and KRBC over there in the big country in Abilene. Before we let you go, Ravin, I did want to ask, we are people that are either going to Abilene or traveling through Abilene fairly often. When we get there, or maybe even if you want to expand this to any of the other places that you cover, when we're going to the big country, where do we need to stop and eat?
So if you're going to Brownwood, you have to go to Underwood. That is the first place that I got told whenever I would go cover Brownwood or Early. Underwood is a big one for us. And then in Abilene in general, there is all kinds of places to go. I mean, there is Sharon's Barbecue. There is Tap House if you want something a little bit fancier, not really fancy, but like you sit outside and it's amazing pasta there.
Always good to know.
I mean, those places like that are amazing. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few because I have not obviously been here forever, but I always go to the same exact places. That's how I am. Whenever I like somewhere, I like stay there. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go there next week. And but yes, love that. I love that. And so far that's been the places to go whenever I go down south, up north. Albany, I usually just get a gas station burrito or something because those are really good
all
there
subs, baby.
Yep. We love it.
Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. She is Ravin Ray out of KTAB and KRBC. Ravin, thank you so much for hopping on with us today, and we hope that our paths cross when we're out there in the big country this year.
Yes, and I was going to tell you guys, I love those sweatshirts of Women Belong in Sports, and if you ever sell those, Ravin Ray would love to buy one.
We got you. We have a link, and we can absolutely hook you up with that. Thanks, Ravin.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys.
There she goes. She is Ravin Ray, sports anchor and reporter out there at KTAB and KRBC. Just a wealth of knowledge. And what I always think is so admirable about local reporters and what they're doing out there is the fact that she's only been there a year, and man, she's
on it.
In on it. I mean, any information that you needed to know, and that's really crazy because we'll get into how many teams that we have out there, but they're talking about they're showing equal amount of coverage for all of those teams. We have 68 teams listed in our big country region, and that is kind of a little bit of a difference between where you're at in markets. When you get out to a market like Abilene in the TV industry, that's a lot of land to cover too. The amount of driving that you're doing, the amount of different communities that you're going to, really interesting.
And just your in-depth knowledge too about six-man football, because looking up some of these players that we're going to talk about today, there's hardly any information on a couple of them because the schools are so small. So the amount of knowledge that you have to have covering six-man football, it's surely impressive.
It really, really is. So we very much appreciate Ravin hopping on with us. Make sure to follow her. Oh, man, you know what? I need to look up. I'm not going to talk anymore until it's at Ravin Ray, Ravin Ray TV on Twitter. So if you were out there in the big country, or even if you're not and want to get some big country knowledge, Ravin Ray is the name to follow.